we just use the rich media, but later we will use the minimum salt media with specified carbon source for more optimized production of the biosurfactant. Okay, I hope that answer give more clear answer to Farah. Okay, I think I will end this session, and then we will move to the second session. And since I see that Miss Yesi is back, you will present after the three presenter of the second session present. I hope it's okay for you, Miss Yesi. Okay. And then for the second session, I will welcome the first presenter, to Isti from ITB. So she will present about the biosurfactant as anti-biofilm agent. Okay, Bu Isti, 10 minutes is yours.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear my voice?
Yeah, clearly.
Okay. Okay, sorry. Wait a minute. Because the time is not 15:50, so I think I still have time, so sorry.
No problem, because one of the presenter cannot make it.
Okay. Okay. Is it okay? Can you see my slide?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, hello everyone. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, and it is nice to see all of you in this very nice opportunity. My name is Isti Aditya Purwasena. I am from Microbiology Department of School of Life Science and Technology, Institut Teknologi Bandung, and I work. I did this work with Dr. Dia Indriani Astuti and also Yuvita Elva Rina Fatimah. Now, on behalf of my team, I'd like to present my study entitled Biosurfactant as anti-biofilm agent of gram-positive and gram-negative bacteria and its effect on carbon steel ST37 biocorrosion in water cooling system. Okay, this is my outline of presentation. And for the introduction, we already know that several problems on water cooling system in many sectors of industries is happen, such as overheating, decreased production effectiveness, material damage, increased maintenance costs, and also corrosion. Related to corrosion, about 50% of corrosion is related to biocorrosion. And biocorrosion is also called as microbiologically influenced corrosion. And this biocorrosion is affected by the presence of the microorganism. So in the biocorrosion, the microorganism will form this kind of biofilm, and this biofilm will grow on the surface. During the biofilm formation, the bacterial growth or the microorganism growth and produce many kind of metabolism product. This metabolic product can promote the deterioration of the surface, so resulting in the acceleration of the corrosion. This biofilm, of course, can be consisted of gram-positive and gram-negative bacteria. In order to deal with this biocorrosion, many industries applied biocide to inhibit the growth of the biofilm, such as glutaldehyde or chlorine and etc. However, as we have already known that this biocide is very dangerous for the environmental, so we try in this study to find the more environmentally friendly compound, so that we can make our environment safe, something like that. Biosurfactant is an amphiphilic compound with hydrophobic and hydrophilic part, and it has been widely known for its antimicrobial activities. So comparing with synthetic biocide, this biosurfactant has some advantage, such as biodegradable, cost-effective, less toxic, and also more stable in a wide range of environment. This is the many type of biosurfactant: polymeric biosurfactant, lipopeptide biosurfactant, glycolipid, and also rhamnolipid. One of biosurfactant that has been proved for its antimicrobial activities is biosurfactant F7. We develop this biosurfactant and we produce this biosurfactant and characterize its activity on as an antimicrobial agent, and then it has been proved that this biosurfactant has a good antimicrobial activity. This biosurfactant F7 was produced from Bacillus sp, and it is characterized as a lipopeptide biosurfactant. And also we already analyzed its stability, and this biosurfactant has a stability environment with a range of pH 2 and 12, and also the salinity is between 0 to 10%, and temperature from 4 to 120 degrees C. In addition, this biosurfactant also characterized as non-ionic biosurfactant, and it has CMC value of 0.5 gram per liter. So this is the objective of our study, is to determine the optimum time for maturation biofilm of isolate 1 and as a gram-positive bacteria, and isolate 5 as gram-negative bacteria on carbon steel ST37. And the second is to determine the MBIC or minimum biofilm inhibitory concentration and MBEC or minimum biofilm eradication concentration of biosurfactant F7 value against isolate 1 and 5. And the last is to determine the effect of biosurfactant F7 on isolate 1 and 5 on the corrosion rate of carbon steel ST37. And this is the material and method. In this slide, I'd like to show the flow chart of our research methodology. At the first, we prepare the bacterial isolate, and then we produce the biosurfactant, and also prepare the carbon steel ST37. And we continue to make a biofilm, and also make the curve of the biofilm formation. And then at the end, we measure the corrosion rate at the carbon steel ST37 by using weight loss method. And also we treat the biofilm on the surface of carbon steel ST37 by using several concentration of biosurfactant, and then we determine the MBIC and MBEC value. We have isolate 1 and isolate 5 were isolated from water cooling system, and we isolated isolate F7 bacillus is from oil reservoir. Both of or all of the all of the isolate bacterial isolate were activated before using in the next experiment. And this is the result. In this curve, I'd like to explain the biofilm formation curve. In this curve, we can see that as the biofilm formation growth, the weight loss of the carbon steel is decreased. And the biofilm reach its maturation after 6 days of incubation. While at the isolate 5, the maturation of the biofilm curve was reached after 3 days of incubation. During the MBIC treatment, we can see here that here we have several concentration of biosurfactant with yellow, green, and orange. And then also we have control negative. Control negative, this is the gray one. The control negative is just only still with the bacteria without any addition of biocide. And the blue one is control positive, consisted of the biofilm treat with the treat with glutaraldehyde as a control positive. Now, and this one is the metal. So from this figure, we can see that compared to the control, the biosurfactant treatment can decrease the formation or inhibit the formation of the biofilm. And also during the MBAC treatment, we can see that the biosurfactant can decrease the growth of the biofilm compared to control, and also can inhibit the biofilm to regrow, something like that. And then this is the last related to the corrosion rate. So when we measure the corrosion rate with when we compare with the control, we can see here that all of the treatment can make the corrosion rate lower compared to all of the control. So we can conclude that the optimum time for biofilm maturation of isolate 1 was 6 days, while isolate 5 was 3 days. And the MBIC and MBEC value of biosurfactant F7 against biofilm isolate 1 and 5 were 28.5 ppm and 570 ppm. And the last biosurfactant F7 can reduce the corrosion rate of isolate 1 and 5 compared to control. All, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bu Isti. And then I welcome to second presenter, Miss Sylvia, who will present about the valorization of corn cob for production of biosurfactant. Please unmute, Miss Sylvia.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Kerry. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. In this opportunity, I would like to present hydrolysis into renewable substrate for biosurfactant production by Bacillus subtilis 3 kp. Mr. Kerry, do you hear me?
Yes, clearly.
Sorry, I think I have any trouble in my internet connection. Hello, Mr. Kerry.
Yes, Anu.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So the background of this research is in Indonesia, corn cob production amounted to 3 million ton per year and not yet utilized. Corn cob are generally burned, used as animal feed, even discarded by the community, generating new pollution in environment. As we know that the corn cob contain lignocellulose, cellulose, and other other substances that can be potentially hydrolyzed enzymatically using some molds such as a Penicillium citrinum into the simple sugar, and this simple sugar called corn cob hydrolysate. This product can be used for other microorganisms as a carbon source for biosurfactant production. Why we choose biosurfactant? Of course, because biosurfactant is an amphipathic molecule that comprises of hydrophilic and hydrophobic moiety, so it can reduce the surface tension and form emulsion. This is the reason why biosurfactant used in various fields of industry, agriculture, for bioremediation, and so on. In our previous study, our research showed that the Bacillus subtilis trichipae was able to produce biosurfactant in molasses substrates and get 12.3 gram per liter crude biosurfactant. However, a study revealing the ability of Bacillus subtilis trichipae to produce biosurfactant using hydrolysate product not been widely reported. So in this study, the aim of this study was to determine the ability of Bacillus subtilis trichipae in producing biosurfactant using corn cob hydrolysate as an effort to enhance the use value of the corn cob. Briefly, this research method consists of a microorganism and culture media preparation, and then we hydrolyze the corn cob using Penicillium citrinum, and after that we produce biosurfactant using that product. In the end of the incubation time, we extract the biosurfactant and we characterize the biosurfactant. So for the hydrolysis of corn cob, first, corn cob we obtain from the local farmer. We delignify using mechanically and chemically using grinding and also sodium hydroxide. After that, we hydrolyze using Penicillium citrinum for 4 days. And in the end of the incubation, we centrifuge and we measure the sugar content using Somogyi-Nelson method. After we got the hydrolysate, we use it for the biosurfactant production. We incubate the biosurfactant production for 3 days. And every 24 hours, we measure the emulsification activity and surface tension. And in the end of the incubation, we extract using acid precipitation. For the crude biosurfactant, we characterize to get the CMC value and its stability in different temperature and pH condition. So based on this table, we know that the lignification process can increase the cellulose and cell content. The decrease in lignin content was in line with an increase in cellulose and hemicellulose. And from this process, we got the product reducing sugar 189 gram per milli for 4 days incubation. According to Chen et al., the lignification process will increase the glucose value by 39.26% using sodium hydroxide. This is the figure of the emulsification activity, surface tension, optical density, and also the pH of the culture. So from the growth response, we find out that the highest optical density was observed in 5-day incubation, and The pH culture decreased from the beginning to the end incubation. This is might be due to the accumulation of organic acid secondary metabolites. For the bioactivity, substantiation reduction and emulsification activity was obtained in 5-day incubation, and the decrease in surface tension indicate the presence of biosurfactant, because biosurfactant reduce the surface tension by breaking the hydrogen bonds on the surface of the water. So this is the critical micelle concentration. We obtained 0.0808 gram per liter of crude biosurfactant, and the CMC value was 4 gram per liter. So this isolate can reduce the surface tension from 70.95 millinewton per meter to 66.29 millinewton per meter. Generally, the CMC value range from 5 to 380 milligram per liter for various biosurfactant. This is the effect of the pH and temperature on the biosurfactant crude extract. The surface tension actually is unstable at different pH, but for the temperature is quite stable, ranging from 30 Celsius degree until 70 Celsius degree. The emulsification activity increased with the increasing pH value, and the highest emulsification activity was obtained at pH 7. The emulsification activity under acid condition was lower than alkaline condition, and the maximum emulsification activity was obtained at pH 7. So our research in line with Zhou et al. In conclusion, this study indicates that the corn cob hydrolyzed can be used as a substrate for biosurfactant production for 3-Kp bacteria and could be potential candidate as renewable substrate for biosurfactant production. And the use of agricultural waste will contribute to the reduction of biosurfactant production costs and increase the use value of organic waste, especially corn cob hydrolyzed. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi. Okay, thank you, Miss Sylvia. So I think for the last presenter, Miss Gading is not in here. So I call Miss Yesi back. Can you present now? Miss Yesi, are you ready?
Okay, I'm trying to share screen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to present my research about identification of 3 red macroalgae from Ujung Genteng, West Java, Indonesia. I'm Yesi from Biochemistry Research Group, Faculty of Mathematics and Natural Sciences, Institute of Technology, Bandung. Macroalgae is the algae, macroscopic, multicellular, and photosynthetic organism with the body of the macroalgae, blade, stipe, and hoofs. Macroalgae, or we known as seaweed, classified into 3 divisions because of its pigments: Chlorophyta, green macroalgae; Pyophyta, brown macroalgae; and Rhodophyta, red macroalgae. Macroalgae is widely application in food and food processing, pharmaceutical, biotechnology, and agricultural. So the macroalgae we will discuss here is red macroalgae that has potential application in food and food processing because it has highest polysaccharide contents. Indonesia is an archipelago country, so we need to identify the macroalgae. There are two methods to identification, morphological characteristic, and by genetic marker acting as ribosomal RNA. Acting as ribosomal RNA is component of the small ribosomal subunit with size 1,700 base pair and have variable regions and conserved region that we use to compare the sequences. The methods of this study, sampling and morphological analysis, DNA extraction, amplification of 18S ribosomal RNA, and sequencing, NCBI, blast nucleotide, and phylogenetic analysis by mega program, maximum parsimony method, bootstrap 1,000 replication. We have collected 3 macroalgae from Ujung Genteng, coastal area West Java, that showed in red arrows. So we have collected 3 samples encoded M1, M2, and M3. We have alignment by blast nucleotide from NCBI website, and we have found that M1 have sequence identity 99.63% with Gracilaria canaliculata, M2 with Hypnea musciformis 99.37%, and M3 Gracilaria F. mammillaris 99.97%. We also observe the morphology, the macroalgae, based on the form of the branch, the stipe, and the blade. So we have found that M1 have a morphology Gracilaria canaliculata, M2 Hypnea choroides, and M3 Gracilaria F. mammillaris. From phylogenetic analysis, we have found that M1 have a same branch with Gracilaria canaliculata. It means that it has close sequence with Gracilaria canaliculata. M2 shot out of branch in this phylogenetic tree. It means that it has different sequences with other species that shown in a phylogenetic tree. M3 also out of branch of this phylogenetic analysis that showed that it has different sequences with other species. From the morphological characteristic, we observe some characteristic M1 with Gracilaria canaliculata with the form of thallus and also the branch, and it conclude that from morphological sample M1 is Gracilaria canaliculata. M2 also include genus Hypnea, but it's slightly different with Hypnea musciformis that have highest homology, but we observe from morphological that the sample M2 is Hypnea choroides. M3, we have found that from morphological observation, the species is Gracilaria F. mammillaris. From this study, we identify 3 macroalgae from Ujung Genteng, coastal area West Java. So we have found that M1 from sequence identity have highest homology with Gracilaria canaliculata, M2 Hypnea musciformis, and M3 Gracilaria F. mammillaris. But we have a slight different observation from morphological characteristic that show that M1 is Gracilaria canaliculata, but M2 is Hypnea choroides, but M3 also we have found that it's Gracilaria F. mammillaris. So from identification using 18S ribosomal RNA, we have found that a bit different between sequence and the morphological analysis. So we need to identify both of the method, especially from macroalgae or seaweed. Okay, thank you for your attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Ms. Jessie, for your presentation. So now we are in the last Q&A session. So please type your question in the chat box to our 3 presenters, Bu Isti, Ms. Sylvia, and Ms. Yesi. So while waiting for the question, from the participant, maybe I have actually I have question for the 3 presenters. First for Bu Isti. Actually, maybe I didn't I missed something in your presentation. If it already your presentation, please explain again. So, what type of biosurfactant can be used to prevent the biocorrosion as you present? Is there any specific biosurfactant for that purpose, or any biosurfactant?
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Gary. How are you? Okay. In case of based on our study, actually we have 2 kind of biosurfactant. We have lipopeptide biosurfactant and also glycolipid biosurfactant. So both of them can be how to say antimicrobial. Can have antimicrobial activity, and also it has activity to eradicate the biofilm effectively. In case of biosurfactant F7, the kind of biosurfactant is lipopeptide.
Okay, thank you for the answer. Okay, so we have a question for Bu Isti, but the other one is for Ms. Yesi. Okay, I will read for Ms. Yesi first. So what is the biggest obstacle when identify algae based on morphological character? Okay, please, Ms. Yesi.
Okay, thank you. Macroalgae is a macroscopic organism, so we still can identify the morphology. So nowadays, I think as ribosomal RNA is still in research, so we still cannot conclude whether it's good marker or not for macroalgae. So we still need the method to compare both of the method to identification by genetic marker or by morphological analysis. I think that's my answer.
Okay, thank you, BCSC. So this is a question from Bu Nurul Wahyudi to Bu Isti. So it's about the mechanism. So whether it break the EPS or inhibit the growth of microorganism, how the biosurfactant prevent the corrosion.
Okay, thank you, Bu Nurul, for the question. Actually, there's a few mechanisms related to the biosurfactant activity on the biofilm. So the first, biosurfactant can change the hydrophobicity of the surface. So it can inhibit the bacteria to make the initial condition for the biofilm. So it cannot attach to the surface of the steel when the biosurfactant treat the environment of the surface of the steel, something like that. So the biosurfactant change the hydrophobicity of the steel so that the bacteria cannot or inhibit to attach to the surface area. So the biofilm cannot be generated. And then if in case of the biofilm has been generated in the surface area, so the biosurfactant can go through the matrix of the biofilm, and it's correct that you mentioned in your question that it break the bond of the EPS. So the biosurfactant can break the matrix of the biofilm and also kill the bacteria, mostly of the bacteria in the biofilm, something like that.
Okay, thank you, Christy. And then no more questions. So while waiting for other question, I will ask to Miss Sylvia. So out of all the agricultural waste, why you choose the corn cob for your work?
Thank you for the question, Dr. Kerry. As I mentioned before, that in Indonesia there are amount of the corn cob because our society plant corn. Yes, and most of the corn cob is not utilized by the society, so it's just burn. Why? So that's why I choose corn cob for this research.
Okay, so is it sustainable? I mean, like, is there a lot of corn cob in Indonesia? I mean, like, if you want to produce for biosurfactant, you need like sustainable access of the corn cob. Is there many corn cob in Indonesia?
Yeah, I think is there many corn cob in Indonesia because as we know that corn is one of the main plant in Indonesia, agricultural plant in Indonesia after rice.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Miss Sylvia. Okay, still there is no other question. So maybe the last question for this session, I will ask for Miss Jessie. Actually, I'm curious because you are from the chemistry department, right? For the biochemical group. But in here you do very biological research, I guess. I mean, like, I suppose like that. Do you have a plan to another plan with the algae in the more chemical way, something like that?
Yes, I think so, because especially in Indonesia, we have abundant macroalgae that we still not explore, especially the chemicals. Yeah, I think it's good potential to do research in other field such as pharmaceutical or food and other. Yes, I think.
Okay. So, and then continuing the question. So, what is your reason to choose the three? Is the three macroalgae you found in Ujung Genteng is the most dominant, or it has some potential? You screened that before, or why?
Yeah, Indonesia have different and abundant resources, but yeah, one of the macroalgae or several macroalgae is Glaciolaria that I present here. Two of the three are Glaciolaria, so its potential in food processing because it has polysaccharide contents. Yeah, we can extract the alginate or other polysaccharide that we can use in emulsifier or other potential application in food.
Thank you, Ms. Yesi. Okay, we have a question for Ms. Sylvia. What do you think the correlation between degradation, I suppose is substrate degradation, with biosurfactant production by Penicillium? Ms. Sylvia?
Yes, Mr. Amonegara. So Miss Farah, actually I didn't know what the mean of your question between correlation between degradation. What degradation?
Maybe you show some corn cob degradation, the sugar production or something like that? No?
No.
Oh. Okay. So maybe Ms. Farah, you want to clarify your question? Okay. Let's wait. Okay, you can.
Maybe lignification.
Yeah,
During
lignin degradation. You liquefaction. You show some.
I
In
think
valorization, you show some that data, Ms. Sylvia.
Yes, Mr. Amonegara.
Yeah, as we still said, did you show any lignin degradation, lignin valorization, and its relation to the biosurfactant production?
Oh yes. Oh, so the Penicillium citrinum that I use in this research produce some lignocellulose or lignocellulose. I'm sorry, produce cellulose, cellulase. I mean cellulase and amylase that it can, and also lacase. That enzyme can break down the lignin bond and it can increase the cellulose and hemicellulose content. So when the lignin and the cellulose bond is breakdown, I think the cellulase enzyme cellulase can more easily catalyze the cellulose from the corn cob, like that. So the amount of the sugar is increased too. And yes.
Okay, so maybe Ms. Farah is confused. What is the relation of the degradation with the biosurfactant production? So then you make the substrate for the biosurfactant production, right?
Yes, I
Okay.
made it from the corn cob.
I see. Okay. I think there is no more question. We already have some plenty questions. So thank you for all presenters. Okay, so we will have a photo session first before we end this session. So if possible, please turn on your camera. Okay, especially presenter. Okay, please. Okay, I will count. It's only one page, so we will take one time. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, once more. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you very much for this very nice presentation for all presenter and very fruitful discussion. So tomorrow we will announce the best presenter from this room. So please come to second day conference, the MBC MCLS 2021. Tomorrow in the end, we will announce the best presenter. And then, this is the end of today conference for MBC MCLS. So we can, but I remind you that tomorrow from 9 a.m. we will have the second day conference with also very interesting talk, keynote speaker, and also parallel session. So we hope that I can meet you all again tomorrow. Okay, so I close this session. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon. Stay safe.
Waalaikumsalam.
Terima kasih Pak Gary.
Terima kasih.
Terima kasih Bu Isti. Maya.
Bu Nikma, apa kabar?
Baik, Bu Isti.
Sibuk nih Bu. Kemarin sempat bertegur sapa nih.
Kangen ya Bu Isti.
Iya.
Ini ada Bu Diri ini. Sehat ya Bu? Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Iya, mari.
Mangga Waalaikumsalam.
Pak Gary besok bicara ya, sukses ya.
Oh, saya tadi.
Besok apa tadi?
Tadi sebelum